Webinars are hot. As a content marketing professional, I've produced hundreds of videos for social and traditional media platforms and currently work with one of the largest podcast networks in the country. So for me, understanding how webinars work in the B2B space is both essential to my professional development and an exciting form of content creation. According to a study commissioned by digital agency Demandwave, 41% of B2B marketers cite webinars as the best marketing tactic for driving revenue. I've set out to discuss webinars with one of the foremost experts in the field, Matt Lay, president of the Streaming Network in Toronto. Together, we've created this multi-part series of videos and podcasts, the webinar Lessons from the Front Line, or How I Learned to Live with Never Getting a Second Chance with Live Virtual Events. Welcome to another episode of LFTF.
It's got a short form now.
Short form.
Acronym.
Lessons from the Front Line, the webinar podcast series that disseminates all things webinar with Matthew Lay, president of the Streaming Network. Matthew, thank you again for joining me here. We're clearly not in my basement.
No, we're not. But I do appreciate the cozy atmosphere that's been created by this burning fireplace we have on the TV.
We're getting ready for Thanksgiving, and it's all ready. It's this, even though this isn't real, the psychology of this thing is making me sweat. So it's that real.
Well, the truth was I was shooting a webinar down here this morning for Advocamp, which is Influitive's upcoming conference, or by the time you guys get this, it might be already passed. I'm not sure, probably will. And we had the set all set up, so I figured it would be a good day to get you back in and get a few of these podcasts hammered out.
So here we are, completely different desk, completely different atmosphere. This is the studio. We never actually were in my parents' basement. So today we're going to dig into a subject that's near and dear to my heart as a content creator. The constant struggle. You create a piece of content, that piece of content goes out there, and then it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work, and if it works, that's great, but even then there's things you can still be doing with it. If it doesn't work, certainly you should be trying to come up with things you can do with it. So we're going to talk about the repurposing of content.
Right.
So let's talk about, let's just dive into sort of what the advantages are of repurposing content. When we say repurpose content, like what do you mean?
Well, I mean, it's basically using content over and over again. In some cases, it's taking content and delivering it in different ways. I mean, most B2B marketers are pretty committed to content, addicted to content. They know the more good content they put out there, generally speaking, their KPIs go up, more better leads, more engaged prospects, and the like. And so they have a pressure on them that they put on themselves, and there's a pressure on them to be putting out content almost daily. A stat from last year said that 67% of marketers are producing content daily, whether that be something like a podcast like this, or some social posts or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of pressure there, and I mean, I think the only way of doing it and doing it well is to repurpose.
Right. No, and I agree 100%. I think that to keep one piece of content and never do anything else with it is a waste of money and a waste of great opportunity. So when we're talking about repurposing, in fact, this podcast is going to be repurposed. So, let's talk a little bit, what do we do with this podcast? We shoot a podcast, we've shot a bunch of these things, and then we
do all kinds of stuff. And I mean, you say it's near and dear to your heart. It's the only way that we have a content strategy is repurposing, right? So we've got this, this studio that's below our office, and so I'm able to come down here with you, and we're able to, strategize in a meeting, come in and do a podcast like this. So it's 20 minutes, or it should be. And then we break it up and we put it onto our YouTube site for short format video. It's now fueling the hub on our website and certain content experiences that we are creating for different sectors. Like a couple of podcasts ago, we were talking about financial services, and we did two-part because we had so much to say. It's become such a big part of our business. Well, that's, those clips are in our content experience. Those videos became part of a webinar series. And of course, we're delivering it as a podcast and a blog.
Yeah.
And so we do one of these and we get, anywhere from 20 to 30 pieces of content out of it. Folks, not me, take it and turn it into other assets for us, digital or written or interactive or whatever it might be. And then, we come back here and we do it all again.
Yeah.
And so it's a necessity for a business our size where I'm running the business, but I'm also the thought leader. If I'm going to produce content at any regular interval, I got to be repurposing, and this is the way that we are doing it ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't even go as far as you can go with these things. We do a certain number of things. Last year, you guys put together this was before my time here. You put together a ROI webinar.
Yep.
That kind of around here is the gold standard for this philosophy,
Yeah.
right? Tell us a little bit about it. Like we'll dig into it, but just give us what was the ROI webinar?
Well, first off, before you were here, it was the only thing we did that year.
Right.
Anything else we did, we were asked to do by somebody else. Like
Right.
I was at a conference or whatever. But yeah, so I like the ROI webinar as an example because of its origins, makes sense to people, and then just how far it went.
Mm-hmm.
So the ROI webinar was based around the year before we had done a lot of data-driven stuff. So we had dug into the webinar benchmarks. Demand Metric was doing a series on just the data-driven approach to marketing, which was big, and everyone was talking about it. And so we did a lot on the various data sets that people just didn't know about. And with that, we started getting into some sort of recommendations around it, but we hadn't really put it together. Mm-hmm. So as we went into the new year, we had been down at Webinar World. We were working with our partner on 24. We've been talking to our customers. We got some really great customer stories about how they were getting ROI, and they were basing it around that data that they got in the year before. And some great best practices came out of it and whatnot. So what we did, because it was about, we were about midway through our transformation from a gig-based business that sold you a webinar or a series or whatever to a, buy a subscription from us. And we were getting into some renewals. So we decided that we would wrap up this ROI presentation and relate it to our key customers as we were going into the renewal meetings. So we benchmarked them against the index. We brought forward the stories and the aspects of how companies like HubSpot or Microsoft or whomever were getting ROI, and we built it into this presentation.
Right. And when you brought this, did you understand that this was going to be a big project? It was this sort of the project that was going to be the cornerstone for the year, or was it really just an attempt to bring all this stuff together?
I think we got the message that as we were going into our first real run of renewals, that if someone's going to renew on a software, and our software is a fairly expensive one, it's not $50 a month or whatever. If you're going to renew on a software, you want to be seeing an ROI. Mm. And at the time, we found that our customers were sometimes struggling to show that ROI. The webinar was one aspect, and it still is just one aspect of why a customer buys from you, but they weren't drawing those straight lines between the webinar and the revenue. That was downstream. That was sales or something else that was kind of doing it. And so we knew that it was important. We strategized with on 24 about it, and we recognized. So we knew we were going to be talking about ROI. Mm-hmm. But no, there was no grand plan with this presentation.
Right.
I had no idea that it was going to become the anchor of content for the year.
Right, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to reverse engineer this. So you didn't know at the time, but what we've discovered from that is you can know, and you can do things, and probably even do, and this was an excellent example of this thing, but if you actually know going in on like how this is going to be treated, there's probably a whole lot of other things you can do with it, and there's all sorts of things. Right.
But I would say that before you even get into the reverse engineering of it, there's probably people who will have the same experience where they do something for a purpose. And then I was asked to deliver it at a conference because someone liked it so much. This is a great presentation. I run this, volunteer on the board of the association, marketing association. Will you be able to do this for the group? We're doing a one-day conference. So it's great. So I went out and I did it for the group, changed it up slightly so it was not customer specific. And after I delivered it a couple times as an actual presentation, it made perfect sense to deliver it as a webinar. And so I know that most, companies who have got their, their thought leaders out there and, they've got their presentation, they've got their thing that they do. And so, that thing is probably a pretty good piece of evergreen content. Because the stuff that's in this ROI presentation, I mean, if you go back and watch it, it's 2 years old now. But I know that I've said almost every anecdote from it, I've repeated, every week since. The content is still relevant to people.
Right. So it started out as a presentation you're making to human beings.
That's right.
Evolved into a webinar, natural sort of next step.
That's right. Yep.
All right. So let's go through it. So now you do this thing, you do the webinar, and take us through all the different pieces and how it all came together.
So right away we were repurposing, but kind of not on purpose, if you will. We decided we were going to do a webinar, and we were in between. We were doing a series of demand metric. We weren't sure where that was going to go. We couldn't get John in studio. And so we decided we were just going to do this anyways. And he's like, great, I got a spot. We'll distribute it on ours. I'm like, all right, but we had planned to do it ourselves. So what we did was we shot the webinar, and we did 3 different intros for the streaming network, demand metric, and for a partner at the time, a company we later acquired called Momentum Conferencing. We were looking to do something for them, and we basically just did 3 intros, not even 3 extras, I don't think. We have 3 intros that we could deliver at 3 different times in webinar format and distribute it to different audiences with a slight different change, which was basically this demand metric webinar, this streaming network webinar. Right. So we started with that. And then we had for some time since the first season of what we called Better Webinars, our webinar series ourselves, is we've been taking video clips and we had been posting them on our YouTube page and been using them a lot of sales enablement, a little bit on the website, but nothing really strategic. We didn't really have a strategic content direction at the time, so we had the videos there. And it was at that time that a marketer from On24 had come to me and said, hey, I just watched this thing you did. I wrote a 2-piece blog article. Do you mind if I just send it to you? We want to post it in the next couple weeks. Can you review it? Mm-hmm. So it was written in my name, and I had never spoken to this person before. It was completely from the ROI presentation. And so I was like, that's cool, that's easy. And we started doing that. And so we posted, I think we created 3, part 1, part 2, part 3 ROI blogs that someone on our marketing team had worked with me on. And we posted them sequentially over a week. And once that was done, we realized that we had about enough content, I guess, to put it together in something sort of a larger piece. So we created an ebook that you can access in our hub. It's the Smart Marketer's Guide to Webinar ROI, which basically just takes these video clips and a bunch of the word content, a little bit of research, and then wraps it up, and we spit that out.
Right. And that was taking all this content. It amounts to white paper. Right?
It's a white paper,
case
an
study
ebook.
Sort of thing.
It was more of a how to get ROI out of your webinar program, and the blogs extrapolated on the ideas from the short videos or the videos, and then the ebook extrapolates just a little bit more from there.
But you use the blog content as your sort of foundational, like that. Those
that
were
was
the text in that thing.
That was it. Yeah.
Put the videos in.
Put the videos in. Some images. It's funny. It's images from the slide deck that I built personally at the time, and then it's a couple clips from the videos that we did. Words from the blog, and then just somebody just massaging it so it feels like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So that was a good piece of rock. That was a good piece of content for getting. They're good for getting the gated downloads and that sort of thing. And then from there, we were working on an interactive piece, which was something called the Webinar Report Card. So another great Canadian company in our space, Vidyard, had just done a maturity assessment on video. The company that did that came to me and said, hey, you should probably do something do something with you on webinars. I said, great, maturity assessment sounds very complicated. I don't know how to test someone's maturity, but I can give you what I got. And I basically gave them all of this stuff. I said, this is, I think, what you want from me is here's these videos, here's a webinar, watch it, here's an ebook. Usually when I go in and I talk to people, the first thing I ask them is, what are your numbers? So I can help them, give them some ideas. And they said, this is perfect. So we created a report card, which is basically asking people where their numbers are in their program. And it's around conversions and engagement and a bunch of other things. And then what we do is based on where they're at against the actual benchmark at the time of from the On24 webinar benchmarks report and the Canadian version that we do, we spit back out to them some ideas. And those ideas are video clips from this ROI webinar and a series of points from the ebook or whatever it might be. So basically, and that actually got launched at the beginning of the following year because it took a bit of coding and programming and all that to get it done. So I mean, it was a full year. And if you go to our website now, you know, on the main page, because we always rotate to the top performing content, the report card and the ebook are still there, even though we've gotten a lot better, thanks to you primarily, at producing more content. But they're still some of our top performing pieces.
That's great. So, and those that are watching, hopefully as we're talking, you're seeing things, you know, flashing on the screen. Obviously this is a podcast, so we're not flashing things down and speaking to them, but we'll, by the magic of post-production, we will have some footage and some clips and some stills of exactly what you're talking about. Otherwise, if somebody wants to go look at this, where would they go if they want to just look at the whole?
You know what? I think that now hearing this and seeing this and just looking at the word ROI, I would just visit the website. Because you'll see it sprinkled. I mean, the interesting thing too is, you know, you had asked me about this, and I said this is the best example I got, and then I went back through and I searched ROI on the website, and now that I have some blogs ghostwritten for me now from people at our agency who, you know, based around what our calendar is and what we're doing, I went in and looked and saw, oh wow, there's a bunch more of this stuff. Like they've been these ones are more deep. We've gone from the high level and we drilled down, but there's more ROI stuff constantly being produced based around the words that I said almost 2 years ago.
So not only does it feed current content, but it actually starts to feed ideas into more content down the road.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what gives ROI to a webinar program in one industry or another, especially now that we've gone vertical and we start getting into a little bit of personalization by the industry, is that the ROI story differs slightly from vertical to vertical or organization to organization, but it's very similar, right? And so what's been happening is as we've been going down this verticalization, or as we've been going down, talking about on-demand, because on-demand's grown so exponentially in the past year or so, we're going back to a lot of these still true points, and my words are continuously being, hashed out on paper and whatever they might be. And, I mean, I never answered it, but in hindsight, if ROI is what I'm talking about this year, this would have been a great strategy. It was lucky, but it would have been a great strategy. Is go deep into an idea, get out in front of customers and make sure it's resonating really, really well. So test it. Once you know you've got it, get out and produce a really strong piece of raw content, which turned out to be this webinar, that will help fuel what you're talking about for the rest of that year or that quarter, depending on how evolved your content strategy is.
And you could really be, if you could be pulling data and you could be looking at what people are searching for. You could really put together a strategy based on where customers are potentially engaging with you, and and then just start to pick what are all the different pieces that we need to create with this thing. Go in. That's what I mean by reverse engine. Like you guys did it in a certain way, but if you go at it the other way and go, we need 15 pieces of content. These are all the things, and know that you're going to cover all those things in order to get a full year's worth of content out of it. And we're going to do this one big thing. Sit down once, right, and then the rest of it is just people around you. Chipping the rock, chipping the pieces off the rock.
But I would suggest you take the other step too. To that point is that we've all been there, and I know I have, where we've sat in a room with a bunch of people that all know a lot about what we do, right? Like we sit there and talk about, I think people will really like this kind of thing. And then when it gets out there, it doesn't resonate with anyone because it's too inside baseball or whatever it might be. I think testing the message is important. And a webinar is a great place to test the message. Maybe not a webinar like this where we're focusing on creating something to go long-term, highly produced, multiple cameras, all of that stuff. But just a standard webinar, or what I did, the human one-on-one presentations worked. But getting that back. The other thing that you can do too is this was done because this was our go-to message. But the other thing that works really well for the content is what we refer to as evergreen content, right? So your customer success management team, CS, CSMs, or CS or CX, whatever you call them, the people on the front line, you know they're getting the same questions all the time. Let's be honest, there isn't a webinar, a topic, or a presentation that I give that I don't talk about engagement, ROI, or how to get more people out to watch. It's going to come up every time, whether you ask it or I bring it into the conversation, that's going to be talked about all the time. And so I'm sure in everyone's business who's listening to this that there's questions and there's things that you take people through all the time. It's your special sauce. It's the thing that you guys do differently. Or there's aspects about the market that people don't understand and that you need to explain to them. That is this kind of stuff, right? You do it like we did, which turned out, again, by accident, to be done really well. In really nice snackable pieces with a really polished delivery that made sense to people, and you might never have to do it again for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Save time, fuel your overall marketing content pipeline. Like there's a lot that can come out of it. So you can go at it from the strategy, like you said. You can go at it from from your people side of it. What are the things you're being asked? You can go at it from your thought leaders, your executives. What are they giving when they get on stage?
Yep.
And use that. But either way, this sort of process works well. I know I'm talking a lot more than I normally do on an answer, but I don't want to...
It's actually not a lot more than you normally do.
No,
it's
I'm always like this?
pretty much on par, yeah.
Well, what I will finish is that...
Because you're very passionate.
Yeah, when we talk about this, like this is all real easy. But I mean, a lot of human work went into all of this, right? Like, you don't want to think about doing what we did. We did this because we had to. It was working, and we weren't producing a lot of other content. But there's a lot of work that goes into editing all of that video.
Oh, yeah.
The writing of the blogs for people who it's not usually taking my words and turning it, the designing of the ebook, the engineering of all of these things. So it takes a lot of work to do all of this. But when you got something that works, if it ain't broke, right, don't fix it.
Yeah. So, and you've touched on this a little bit, but in terms of like, why do you think this piece works so well? Like, what was it the topic? Was it the format? Like, what is it that made this thing go?
Well, I think we aspired to answer a question in it that people have been asking for a while and we're struggling to answer. I think that's just it. Is that someone, not me, recognized that our primary buyer the webinar producer within an organization is generally a cog within the wheel. A lot of companies recognize that the webinar is an important part of their marketing strategy. They know that they anecdotally knew that people that went through webinars were more likely to buy. They had some integration, especially our customers were really well integrated. But that idea of that spend to that that spend to that pipeline or that growth, that wasn't really there. And they wanted to validate the return on investment so that they could help get more budget to do more, right? Because they knew that they were driving more overall pipeline. They just couldn't draw the line. Yeah. So I think it was the right message at the right time for people.
But it's also the thing people are looking for, right?
It was the thing people were looking for.
People are searching for that, so you're going to get more traffic. People are going
right.
to find that stuff because it's just going to be your SEO is going to be much better if you're putting something out there that somebody actually cares about, right? So.
And I think this happens with a lot of companies. Like I joke around. I was joking around with the gentleman from Influitive about how I end up always doing 1, 2, or 3 presentations, and it's been going on not for a short time but for a long time, right? It's the engagement ones, these ones, and a lot about video. He's like, that's stuff that people still don't understand. And I'm like, yeah. If you could distill it and it makes sense, then it's stuff that's always going to kind of work. And I think these are like indicators, right? Indicators of content that is going to be good. And when you find something like that story that really resonates with everyone, that case, that anecdote, that whatever, you got to run with it.
Yeah. Listen, so we're out of time.
Already.
I know. Well, we're trying to keep these to 20 minutes. So sometimes what we're doing is 1 and 2. So there will be a part 2 to this conversation. We're going to continue the conversation. So Matthew, thank you very much for this first part of the conversation. Until the next one, we're going to continue to talk about how to repurpose and disseminate content. So until next time, I'm Peter Vamus, Matthew Lay.
Thank you.
Until next time.